The crew and staff of Krown Countdown U would like to dedicate this broadcast to the memory of Bill McLean, the longtime AUS broadcaster and mentor to many in the media covering university sport. He will be sorely missed.
The X-Men weren't quite the same. Ashton Dixon across midfield, lost his space, bounces off two tacklers and breaks it outside. Matt Montgomery is given chase, just pushes him out of bounds at about the 2-yard line, but a huge gain.
We have a jam-packed edition of KCU this week, so let's not waste any more time and get over to Ryan Sullivan.
Easy there with the Pistols. I like it. Let's start things out in Quebec, over to Montreal, where the reigning Yates Cup champs kicked off the postseason, playing an all-too-familiar opponent in Jeremy Rock and the Sherbrooke Verreor. In his 5 CIS seasons, Rock has faced the Caravan every year in the Dunsmore semis, winning just once back in 2012. Would Rock win another before his illustrious CIS career came to a close? Let's find out. Sherbrooke, Montreal. Montreal's opening drive, they put points on the board. Sean Thomas Erlington busts through the gap. He weaves his way into the blue fake grass. 7-blank MTL. Right before the half, Caravans in the Sherby red zone. Gabriel Cousineau to Samuel Nadeau-Hughes. We head to the poutine break with Montreal up 15-2. Third Q and Montreal begins to implode. Regis Sibasu hauls in the pass but gets stripped of the football. Remy Santu scoops up the leather and rumbles his way into the end zone. That is a 29-yard fumble return. MTL lead cut to just 6. Minutes later on 2nd and 23, the Caravan miss a gimme. Cousineau airs one out for a wide-open Sibasu. He drops the ball, his best Ted Ginn Jr. impression, and on the ensuing punt, well, this happens.
En pleine course, Frédéric Caron vers les lignes de côté, un bon retour, attention, 1 contre Félix Ménard-Prière, Caron qui accélère, le voilà à la ligne de 30, à la ligne de 20, à la ligne de 10, touché, Frédéric Caron.
Need me to translate that? Touchdown, Sherbrooke. Late fourth, Sherby goes for it on 3rd and 1 on their own 26. Rock fumbles the rock. No pun intended, kind of intended. And the Caravan make them pay for the turnover with this Thomas Erlington 2-yarder. Montreal escapes with the win, while Jeremy Rock's season ends once again at the hands of the Caravan. Rock finishes his career as the CIS all-time leader in passing yards, attempts, and completions. However, 0 Dunsmore Cup titles. Concordia, Laval. This one was not even a contest. Laval QB Hugo Richard passed for 4 touchdowns, including this 10-yarder to Felix Lachasseur, and this one from 6 yards out to Maxime Boutin, while also rushing one in himself. Marc-Andre Langevin came in for Richard in the 3rd Q, tossing this 24-yard major to Etienne Moissan in the 4th quarter. Laval gets by Concordia by 44 points. And here we go. It's the matchup we've all been anticipating since last year's Dunsmore final. Caravan, Rougeor, round 1. The season series is locked at 1 apiece, but it's the Caravan who are still the reigning champs. Acadia, St. FX. This one was tight until X blew the doors open in the 3rd Q. The X-Men scored 17 unanswered points in the quarter. St. FX defends home field and takes this one with ease. Ashton Dixon with yet another monster performance, by the way, for the X-Men in the win. So the Loney Bowl final is set. X travels to Sackville to face the Mounties in the rematch of last year's Loney Bowl final, which of course was won by Mount Allison.
We now roll in Charles-Antoine Senat from TVA Sport, who covered the Sherbrooke-Montreal game which was the 2 versus 3 game that provided the expected level of entertainment, not mentioning any other games. Charles, before we tee up the Dunsmore Cup, your thoughts on the season for the Sherbrooke Bears and where that program goes from here?
Well, the beginning of the season was really, really promising. They gave a very good challenge to Laval, lost in overtime, beat Montreal as well, but you still have to perceive this season as being disappointing because, again, they came short in the semis, and they just were hitting the peak of one of their cycles. There was 14 graduating players, including their all-star quarterback, Jeremy Rock, who broke 3 Canadian records. And the recruiting hasn't been that good the last couple of years. All of that to say that I thought this year, their year, or at least that the year that they had the better shot at winning the Q, but they came short, and it might be a tough rebuilding process for them.
Okay, Montreal-Laval. Let's look at the defending champs who again need to go up to Quebec City to get through to the national round. Have the Carabins maximized their talent on offense this year? And given the pattern between Laval and the Blues, is it the first team to 16 points that wins?
To answer your first question, they did. While they played well all year, they had a couple of weeks off at the middle of the season, mainly due to injuries. Now they're pretty healthy, or they were anyway, going into Sherbrooke. What I like is they're really, really balanced. Early on in their season, they were really struggling to get the running game going. However, in the last month, through their 4 games, they were able to get over 200-yard rushing. And as you know, when it gets high, you need to have that balance on offense. Now they're heading back where they won their first playoff game in forever last year at the Dunsmore Cup. And I think those two teams are evenly matched. The only thing is, like we said previously, Montreal had a way tougher and way more physical game last weekend in the semis than Laval did against the Concordia Stingers. And they were able to rest some player in the second half, something that they need to do.
Is there an Achilles heel for Laval? Defensively, they are very solid. Does it come down to game management for sophomore quarterback Hugo Richard?
I would have had a tendency to say so earlier on in the season. They had a lot of first-year players playing, especially on defense, and their pass defense isn't as strong as we had seen in the past years. But as they do every year, they've been progressing every week, and now they're at a time where their whole team is really balanced. Those young players are playing well, and Hugo Richard was struggling earlier on, got injured, missed 3 games if I'm not mistaken. But since he's been back, it looked like he put that sophomore jinx behind him, and he's been playing the best football of his season and maybe of his career in the last month or so. So I don't see any weaknesses on the Laval Rougeau program. They are very good, and if you want to talk about game management, well, you're going to see the battle between probably 2 of the best coaching staff in the Q and maybe in the country. Glenn Constantin and his coordinators have been there for over 10 years, and Montreal last year had a tremendous play up front, and Danny Machocha is one of the best football coaches in the country at every level combined.
Well, thanks to Charles, and we'll see him later in the show. But coming up, it's Backwards Day in the C-Dub. Stick around.
The CFL and our partners at Football Canada want to make sure we keep growing, promoting, and investing in a safe game. Hit! Football Canada now requires all amateur coaches to be safe contact trained by 2017. By creating a standard of safety for all in our football community, we're making an already great game even better. Make sure your youth coach is safe contact trained, because making a safe game means making a better game.
Hey everybody, welcome back to KCU. The Saskatchewan Huskies limped into the postseason, getting in by just the skin of their paws. Standing in the Prairie Dogs' way, the mighty Calgary Dinos, the undefeated Calgary Dinos, the Calgary Dinos who beat the Huskies twice this season by a combined score of 103 to just 34. This one was over before it even began, right? A little foreshadowing, perhaps. Not so fast, though. First cue, the Dogs take the first bite. Kyle Siemens under pressure gets it off to Jarvis James. JJ does the rest. 27 yards later, it's 7-blank for the Green Dogs. Over to the second Q we go. Score tied at 8. Siemens on the run. He hits Tavin Godfrey. TG takes it to the house. We head into recess with Saski up 16-8. Can you say upset? Well, not so fast again. To the fourth, Huskies up by a 3-spot. Mercer Timmis puts his team on his huge shoulders. Timmis takes it 24 yards all the way to the house party. Dinos take their first lead, and they do not look back. Under 5 to go in the game, the big red truck puts it into overdrive. Timmis with a massive chunk of change puts Calgary deep into Saski territory. We're minutes later, Jimmy Underdahl caps off the drive, and Jimmy, well, yeah, Jimmy likes it. The Dinos get a scare from the Green Dogs, but take this one by 8. Buckley and Timmis, what more can be said about these guys? Check out those numbers from the stud Dinos. Absolutely outstanding. Calgary advances to the Hardy Cup and will play host to the title game for a 6th straight year. Just who will Calgary meet? Let's find out. Manitoba, UBC. T-Birds head coach Blake Nill looking for his first playoff win at UBC. First cue, T-Birds strike. Second series for the Bisons, a second interception for Teo Dizar. Mitchell Barnett plucks Dizar. It leads to this 8-yard major from Travell Pinto. UBC with an early lead. Very next series for the home side, Brandon Deschamps welcomes himself into the game. He says aloha. The one called Banger lives up to his nickname, banging his way into the end zone, and the T-Birds lead grows to 2 scores. Second half now, Marcus Davis shows why he's one of the best returners in the nation. Davis takes this punt return 42 yards to the Manitoba 15-yard line, and just one play later, Michael O'Connor hits Alex Morrison from 15 yards out. That makes it 39-blank T-Birds, and the route is on. Fourth Q, UBC adds a little salt to the Bison's wound. Dizar gets picked for a 4th time, the 2nd time by this man, Mitchell Barnett. He takes it 55 yards all the way to the house. UBC stunning the nation on national television, might I add, taking this one by 42. UBC's offense was on point in this one, but a ton of credit has to be given to the defense. As mentioned earlier, the T-Birds picked Dizar 4 times while forcing 1 fumble, which UBC recovered, and sacking the Bison's pivot twice. So the Hardy Cup final is all set and ready to roll, and what a story we have in this one. Blake Nill, after leading Calgary to 6 straight Hardy titles, returns to face his old team looking to snatch the T-Birds their first Hardy championship since our own Sean Olsen was tossing the pigskin up at Point Grey.
If Kyle Siemens had more of a shot in training camp, would the Saskatchewan Huskies, Sean, still be playing football? Would they have finished in 2nd spot if there was more competition back in August?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. The stats don't belie that sort of type of thinking. He's 1-2 as a starter in his 3 games as a starter. He's put up a ton of yards, 8 touchdowns, 1 interception. All those stats are great, but they haven't translated to wins. I think when everything's said and done, the University of Saskatchewan Huskies just did not have the horses this year to finish any higher than 3rd place in the Canada West Conference.
Yeah, Coach, you said it off the top in our season preview show that you thought Drew Burko was a guy who was primed for a breakout this year, and that's what everybody saw from outside of this situation for the Saskatchewan Huskies. Drew Burko was the obvious choice at quarterback for them. They felt he was ready to take the next step. It didn't quite materialize, so in hindsight, we can sit there and go, maybe Siemens should have taken over the role earlier on, but realistically, it looked like it was Burko's job to lose from day one, and I thought that he'd earned that right with his past resume.
How is the Hardy Cup not totally and completely gored about Blake Nill?
Well, there are some other men in the picture here, and one of the guys I want to focus on is Ryan Shane, the new offensive coordinator at Calgary. Calgary now runs a very different offensive system than they ran the year before under Blake Nill, with UBC basically adopting that offense on their side of the ball. So while I've been very confident in Blake Nill's ability to pick apart Calgary's defense because it's essentially what he ran there, I'm not as sure about his ability to game plan for Calgary's offense, which has brought a whole bunch of new wrinkles and uses its players in a whole bunch of different ways than it did when Blake Nill was there. On the UBC side, Coach Olsen, my colleague, his fingerprints are still all over that team. This isn't all about the Blake Nill cult of personality, even though it's a big part of the storyline.
I think he definitely has his fingerprints all over both of these teams. I think that can be a good or a bad thing. I think the University of Calgary Diners are going to be very, very motivated with the way that he left town from their program. And I think that's going to be an underlying story throughout the course of the game. But two other guys that I want to talk about on the UBC staff are Coach Steve Barato and Coach Greg DeLaval. Both of those have been major, major components of the University of Calgary's offense over the last 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years even. And they've had a very big part of what UBC is doing on the opposite side of the ball. And I think that's going to also rear its ugly head this coming weekend because Coach Harris and those two guys know each other very, very well.
Coming up, X's and Olsen and semi-preeminence. Krown Produce secures produce locally and from around the world for Canadian retailers. Krown Produce is also proud to secure sponsorship of University football on Shaw. Krown Produce, supporting Canadian retailers and Canadian amateur football.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Krown Countdown U. Let's take a moment to step away from the highlights and get into a little in-game analysis. Here's this week's edition of X's and Olsen with Gord Randall and the coach, Sean Olsen.
Thanks, Ryan, and welcome to another exciting edition of X's and Olsen with myself, Gord Randall, and the coach, Sean Olsen. Today, we want to talk about Andrew Buckley, the fifth-year quarterback at Calgary, who we both think is going to win his second straight Heck Crichton Trophy this year. This guy is head and shoulders above the pack, and coach, he is showing a wide range of talents that really separate himself from the pack. What is it that you want to look at today?
Well, the one thing I'm going to point out about Andrew Buckley is that he has got a combination of skill sets that is really, really hard to find. He's got poise, he's got intelligence, and he's got athleticism. He might be the best quarterback I've seen with the complete package in the CIS over the last decade. I compare him a lot to Aaron Rodgers. Let's first look at this first clip here. We got a deep out pattern to the wide side of the field. This is a legitimate pro throw, okay? Let's roll this forward. You're going to see a simple 5-step drop. Deep out from Rashawn Simonize. Ball's going to get there on time and in rhythm. Right there. Let's pause it right there. Right there. You've got this throw. This is legit 35-yard in the air throw on a rope on time right to the sidelines. Almost indefensible. He does this routinely.
All right, and on this next clip, you're going to see a pressure look from Saskatchewan. They're going to bring blitzers in both these two gaps right here. And Darius Sirocco, the left guard, and Mercer Timmins get a little mixed up, leaving Buckley facing some free rushers. What happens next, Coach?
Well, one of the things you're going to see is some of the amazing traits that Buckley has. You're going to see both his poise and his athleticism in the same clip. Let's roll this forward. Here we go, and let's freeze it right there. Two guys free. 1, 2, dead to center. This is the worst possible scenario a quarterback can have. Chaos around him. He's got to maintain his base, maintain his poise, get up underneath this rush, and find a crease. You'll see him step up here just like he's taught and eventually get out and scramble into space. Let's roll it forward. Gets up underneath, slides to the side. Let's pause it right there. You're going to see this defender in pursuit. He's got the angle on him. You'll notice a nice little pump fake from Buckley to freeze the defender's feet, create another opportunity for him to get outside. One thing I love that he does here, he never tucks the ball like a running back. He always keeps it in a quarterback position so he can be a threat to throw. Let's roll this forward. Little pump fake right there, freezes his feet, gets up the field, pointing people out the block, 10-yard, 12-yard gain. Absolutely impressive. Way harder to do than Andrew Buckley makes it look right there.
On this next play, you're going to see Andrew Buckley demonstrate a couple other professional attributes. He's going to sit back in the pocket, progress through all of his reads. It's setting up like a coverage sack for the University of Saskatchewan. Then he escapes the pocket, finds his check down on Mercer Timmins. You'll see he'll get a nice clean pocket here. He's going to progress through his reads. 1, 2 up in the middle of the field. 3 over here. 4 off to his left. And then he's finally going to take off. You'll see Timmins exit out here. He's going to find him with an epic shovel pass to get the first down.
Here you see him looking down the field. This is very, very difficult to stand in a pocket for that long. Finds an escape. Unbelievable pitch. That is very difficult to do. Rare attributes, rare poise, rare intelligence, and that takes athleticism.
Poise, athleticism, and some guile mixed in there as well. Andrew Buckley appears to be by far the best pro prospect at quarterback in the CIS, and now you've seen why. Thanks, Ryan. Back to you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. An excellent job, as always. The Laurier Golden Hawks have been the surprise of the OUA this season. After a slow start, the G-Hawks clawed their way into the postseason and followed it up with a win in the quarterfinals over the reigning Yates Cup champs and former Vanier Cup finalist McMaster. However, up next was the 2013 Yates Cup champs, the Western Mustangs, who came into this one undefeated and with a giant chip on their shoulder. So let's see if those Mustangs could hold court. Second cue, game tied at 6s. Matt Buren takes the handoff and bounces his way into the purple grass. Western takes the lead, and the Western faithful, they're loving it. Even the track club loves it, but they don't love this. Will Finch's pass gets picked by Malcolm Thompson. The sociology major takes it 58 yards all the way to the house for the sweet pick 6. And just like that, the Western lead is cut to 2 going into the half. But the second half was all Mustangs. This 5-yard run from Uren was his second major of the game and extended the Purple Ponies' lead to 10. Laurier cut that lead to 7 with a field goal, but with less than a minute to go, Cedric Joseph put the G-Hawks season to bed. Western prevails, taking this one by 14. Now the good news for Mustangs fans is that they won the game. The bad news, however, they lost starting QB Will Finch, who left the game in the second half with what is rumored to be yet another concussion. Over to the other semi now, Carleton and Guelph start this one out in the third cue. Griffins up 12-9. Brandon Gordon takes the rock, and he and his leather-faced friend go for a run. Gordon goes 51 yards inside the Carleton 5. 2 plays later, he caps off the drive, and the Griffins' lead grows to 10. Guelph D was all over the Ravens' pivot, Jesse Mills, all day long. Mills was sacked 3 times on the day. Late in the fourth, Griffin stud running back Johnny Augustine scores his second major of the game, this one from 33 yards out. Guelph uses stellar D and the running game to breeze past those Carleton Ravens. The Griffins rushed the ball 49 times, racking up an incredible 347 yards on the ground. The Griffins are off to the Yates Cup final for a second consecutive season. So it's all set. Guelph will travel to London to face the Mustangs to battle it out in the 108th edition of the Yates Cup. However, will the Purple Ponies have all-star slinger Will Finch under center in this one? That is the question.
Some say it was a dirty hit or a series of them. Some say it was a question of officials accurately calling helmet to jaw hits. Cut it any way you like, but Will Finch, one of the top 3 quarterbacks in this country who also has professional potential, will likely not play in the Yates Cup. This kid may never play again, Sean. What are your thoughts about where the CIS is in terms of legislating these head hits and this head contact?
Well, I have some very strong opinions on this topic. I think, well, I look back to when I was coaching, and this was an issue that I had with the way that our rules are worded, but also the way that they're enforced and our unwillingness to try to expand our repertoire in that sort of player safety realm. I remember having conversations with referees and also people that were decision makers about that we had to do something about the defenseless player and move forward to the NCAA model or the NFL model, which I think are leading the charge on this player safety front. They haven't done it. They're still sticking to a spearing type of enforcement of the rule, and I think that's got to change moving forward. I think we have to put our kids and these young men's safety at the forefront.
As for the Mustangs, they are in a fairly good situation here. Losing Will Finch is very difficult to replace, but fortunately with his past injury history, they have a guy by the name of Stevenson Bone who's an experienced backup and as experienced a backup as you're going to see in the CIS. He's a third-year guy, actually the son of Jamie Bone, who's a Western legend and former Heck Crichton winner. And actually last year in the regular season, he put up a better QBR than Will Finch did. And he struggled in the playoffs last year, wasn't asked to do much last week in about a quarter and a half of action, but he is more than capable enough to take this run-heavy Western attack, which we referred to in the past as being system-proof for quarterbacks, and take them to a victory.
Well, we've been waiting for Guelph Western all season. Finally, it's here. Lots of talk about the Mustangs quarterbacking, as you just heard. However, Griffin's quarterback James Roberts is on the high wire now without a net since Alex Skinner left the team back in week 3. Roberts is going to have to stay away from the picks. I think a good rushing game is going to help him out here.
Absolutely, and Guelph, just like Western, both teams last weekend ran for well over 300 yards on the ground, which puts any quarterback in a really nice position. James Roberts has been guilty of being a bit of a roller coaster ride this season, engineering that Guelph offense to some startling highs and startling lows this season, the low point probably being that loss to Queens and Kingston in week 6. He's going to need to take care of the ball, but like you said, Jim, handing the ball off 30 times a game probably helps him make fewer mistakes.
I think the quarterbacks are obviously going to play a role in this game, especially because the Western Mustang defense has been very opportunistic this year. 5 defensive touchdowns on that side of the football is definitely, if they can get one on that side, that's going to be a major factor in the end result. The other thing that could play in Guelph's favor is Ben Kelly, the kicker for the Mustangs, is 10 for 17 this year, 58% conversion on kicks. Points are going to be at a premium. They're going to need every single one to count. He's going to have to be at his best this weekend.
4 championship games on the slate. Need we remind you, these are what they are? All the conference championship games this week. For many of us, they have just as much, if not more, meaning than the bowl games. So let's start in Quebec with Charles.
Epic battle this weekend, Quebec City versus Montreal. Last year, the Carabins caused a surprise. They were at a peak of a recruiting cycle, meaning last year they were really, really mature. They lost some key players to the pros, but Laval did as well. And what's really impressive is to see those two programs use many rookies who don't look rookies out there. The sack leader in the country from Laval, Mathieu Betts, is one of the best defensive players in the country in his first year. 4 of the starting 5 DBs from Montreal are rookies as well. I think it's going to be a wonderful showdown. It's going to be defensive again, and it will for sure end in the last possession of the game. Probably a field goal by one of those 2 kickers.
My game of the week is going to be Thunderbirds versus Dinos. This is going to be a lot closer game than it was the first week of the season when they met. Kind of unusual having such a gap between matchups. I think this week it's going to come down to veteran players versus young players. UBC's offense and defense, talent-laden, skilled players with speed, but a lot of them are young. On the other side, you have a veteran crew. You have players in their 5th year like Andrew Buckley. You have Mercer Timmis, who has been a horse this year. And then you have the whole defense. Vastly a veteran crew. Guys that are going to be able to be through this situation before. And I think that's going to play significantly in the end result. I picked Calgary here in this game.
For me, it's the Yates Cup, often the most exciting of the conference championships, and it features, as we all predicted at the beginning of the season, Western versus Guelph. The matchup that never happened. Well, it's finally happening, and with Will Finch being out, all of a sudden there's a new level of intrigue to this game. Western, that has been the juggernaut all season long, suddenly is missing its captain on offense and may end up looking like a rudderless ship. For Guelph, on the other side, they played a very tidy affair last weekend, took care of Carleton in relative comfort, and come into Western on a confidence high. They've got to keep it going and start early and often pounding away at the Western team if they're going to pull off this upset.
I may be calling the Hardy on Global, but my upset special is in the AUS in the Loney Bowl. St. FX matches well against Mount Allison, and the Mounties are down to 3rd in the depth chart at running back. But for now, let's get out to the game.